Hey everyone, welcome to my outdoor and DIY channel. I'm JP, and today I'm going to be walking you through a brake change on a 2016 Ford Explorer. This one is the sport base model, four-wheel drive, and it looks like we're going to be changing the brake pads and rotors. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. Alright, so I just broke the lug nuts loose on this side. I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side, and then I'm actually going to lift this up and get both wheels off the ground because I'm going to do these at the same time. I actually have to take the rotors down and get those turned, and in order to do that I have to have both wheels off at the same time. So let's get that done. So you can see how I have the jack under here. This is actually a subframe on a unibody. So just follow the frame mounts here, and that's where everything attaches to, so that's a good place to jack. And then I just throw a jack underneath that mounting bolt right there, and that will be on both sides. So I'll do another one right there, and that's what I'll use to hold this up both sides at the same time. Just make sure that your wheels are chocked, your back wheels are chocked, and make sure that that parking brake is on, and as always, keep it in gear. And now we'll let it down slowly, and we should be stable. So now we'll go ahead and we'll finish pulling off these wheels. All right, and then just as an extra safety precaution, I like to take this wheel and just stick it back up underneath there like that. Just in case it does fall, it's going to catch some of the weight. You're probably still going to get hurt, but just to be safe. So here we are with the caliper now, and if we just go right here to the back, you can see I have a size, this is an 18 millimeter, and I'm going to be taking these two caliper bolts off. So now you can see those caliper bolts, and we have this one here, and then this one right up here that I have this socket on. So we're going to pull those two off, remove the whole caliper, and then we'll go ahead and take this rotor off. And now that we got that caliper up out of the way, it's time for us to take this bolt off that holds this brake rotor on. So you might need a little backup wrench to do that. You might need an extra hand. Then you just got to persuade it a little bit. And now your rotor's off. So just repeat this for the other side, and the next time you see me, I will have new rotors, and we'll go ahead and we'll do those brake pads. All right, while I'm waiting on those rotors to get turned, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take just a scrub brush and maybe some light steel wool or sandpaper, and I'm going to clean this up a little bit. All right, we got our new rotors, and give them a quick little spray here. See some fingerprints. All right, we're going to just line up that hole. And for this one, it's actually on the bottom. Okay, but we got that all cleaned up. That hole should line right up. And then I'm just taking a little bit of blue Loctite. It's not permanent, just a little bit for this here. Right, and I'm gonna run that in there. Another thing, make sure that you're checking your torque specs, and you can find all those in the service manual, and just make sure that you're torquing everything according to those specifications. So now I'm just going to go ahead and mount this caliper so that I can then pull it apart, and we'll change those brake pads. Okay, so we got that mounted back up. Now what we're going to do, this is a two-piece caliper, so I'm going to pull this part of the caliper off. I'm going to inspect the glides and everything, make sure all the grease is good, re-grease it, and then we're going to put everything back together the opposite way of which it's coming apart. So to see these parts that are coming off now, just look for these little rubber booties here. Right? There's one on the top, there's one on the bottom. So these might take a little bit of force, so if you have to, remember, get you a cheater bar or a longer ratchet, right, and use those to break that loose. And now that I have those broken loose, before I take it off completely, I'm going to take a clamp, and this is what I'm going to use. to compress that caliper. And this is a dual piston, so I use 2 of these clamps. And these are just 6-inch clamps. They're like $6 or $7 or something at Harbor Freight. All right, so just do a little with the bottom one, a little with the top. You just alternate back and forth. All right, now once I have this completely compressed, I can take these off. So in case you are wondering, I did go ahead and remove the cap up at the top. You don't have to, because that cap does have like a one-way check valve in it. It's just an expanding diaphragm in there. So for this next part, I'm just going to remove these caliper slide bolts. You can see these have grease on them. Try not to wipe that off or get that, get any of the crud or dirt or anything on there. You want to keep that clean, because we will be cleaning those and re-greasing those before we reassemble it. So once we pull those out, we can pull this caliper piece off there. Just get that up out of the way. And now we can remove our brake pads. And they just pull off. And you can see just how bad these ones were. They were pretty much done. Now that we have those out of the way, we are ready to install our new shims. These are fancy term pad abutment shim, but just make sure that when you pull them out, you're just matching those, and I usually just do them one at a time. That way I can just get them right back as they go. All right, now we take our new pads, and they should just slide right in. So just looking at these brake pads, these ones do not have the springs that the other OEMs brake pads had. Looking at these here, right? So these springs are missing. As far as making a difference, if anything, it's just going to possibly reduce the squeaking, as these pull the brake pads back off the rotor after you apply your brakes. But some manufacturers just don't feel the need to include those. Maybe they perform better without it, or maybe it's just not enough difference for them to justify the cost. But if it does make a difference, then I'll be doing a follow-up video on these and just going over that and possibly changing out to some different brake pads. So we'll go from there. But now here we are. I am just going to add a little bit of grease to the back side of these brake pads. Remember, don't get any grease on your rotors or anywhere like that, just the back side. And it doesn't need a lot. I really like this grease here that has like a little brush to apply it, and I just kind of do it in the same pattern as that contact point right here. So again, what that does is that just absorbs vibrations and it reduces some of your squeaking. And on the back side, all I did was I just applied it in that circular ring that you find on the brake caliper piston. Okay, now I have my caliper glides. These are all cleaned and then re-greased, and so those are going to go back in to those little rubber boots. So to do that, I usually just line up the top one. You want to be sure to compress that boot so that you don't tear it. And then using one of these bolts as a guide, just right back in there. And I use that to hang that top one, and then that way I have enough wiggle room here to where I can get that bottom boot in there. And again, just be sure not to tear it. Once you get those back in there, remember, tighten up according to your torque specifications, and you shouldn't have any problems. Right? Double check, triple check, make sure everything is tight. All right, so there we are. We got all that put back together. I'm going to give it just one more quick spray down with some brake cleaner here. All right, spray that stuff on there like you don't have to buy it. Okay, now it's time for us to put our wheels and everything back on, jack it up, pull the jack stands out, and then lower it back down. All right, we got the wheels put back on, everything's all tightened up the way that it should be. Put the cap back on our brake fluid reservoir, and then you know, remove those jack stands and wheel chocks at the end. Make sure you leave those wheel chocks in until you are completely finished with the vehicle up in the air. Now, we're not done. So what we need to do, we need to take this car out and we need to seat those brake pads on those rotors. The way that I like to do it is I get the car up to about 60 miles an hour, 50 to 60 miles an hour, and then I get on the brakes pretty hard. You don't want to lock everything up. You don't want to get onto the ABS, but you do want to lock it up hard enough to where you can really feel the force and you're slowing down. And I do that. I get it back down to about 5-10 miles an hour, and then I accelerate and do it all over again. I do that probably 10-15 times. You know, once you'll start to feel the brakes. They'll really start to bite. Before you do take off though, you want to pump those brakes just a little bit, get those brake pads into those rotors so that you do stop. Make sure that when you're doing that, that you don't have to stop completely when you're right in the middle of it. Otherwise you could gall those brake pads to those rotors and create a shiny spot that may or may not squeak on you in the future. So I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Again, if you have any pointers, make sure you put them down in the comments. I'm sure you will anyway. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe and check out some of my outdoor stuff. And my wife says that I need a new sign off. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. You get it? Catching? I'm catching fish usually. What are you gonna do?